The bullet whizzed past Samuel Crawford's ear so close he felt the heat of it. And in that heartbeat of chaos, he saw her, a dark-haired woman bound and trembling on the canyon floor, her dress torn and her eyes wide with terror, as four bandits circled their campfire like wolves around wounded prey. Samuel had been tracking stolen cattle for 3 days through the Black Hills of South Dakota, following a trail that led him deeper into the rugged wilderness beyond Hill City, where honest men rarely ventured in this summer of 1882. He had not expected to stumble upon this scene, nor had he planned to play hero tonight, but something about the woman's desperate situation made his hand move to his Colt revolver before his mind could counsel caution. The bandits were distracted, passing a whiskey bottle and arguing over what to do with their captive, their voices carrying crude suggestions that made Samuel's jaw tighten with anger. He dismounted from his bay, gelding in silence, ground tying the horse behind a stand of ponderosa pines. The canyon walls rose steep on either side, painted orange and gold by the setting sun, and the air smelled of sage and wood smoke. Samuel moved like a shadow between the rocks, his boots finding purchase on stone worn smooth by ancient waters. He was a tall man of 26 years, lean and weathered from a life spent outdoors, with eyes the color of storm clouds and a reputation for fairness that had earned him work as a ranch foreman on the double bar spread outside Hill City. The woman's gaze found him in the gathering dusk, and he pressed a finger to his lips, signaling her to stay quiet. She gave the smallest nod, understanding flickering across her face despite the fear that held her rigid. Samuel could see the rope burns on her wrists where she had struggled against her bonds, and the sight made something protective rise fierce in his chest. He counted the bandits again for men, all armed, all dangerous. The odds were poor, but he had faced worse. "You boys picked the wrong woman to take," Samuel called out, stepping into the firelight with his revolver drawn but pointed at the ground, giving them a chance to surrender that he knew they would not take. The bandits spun toward him, hands flying to their weapons. The nearest one, a stocky man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, laughed without humor. "Well, now, looks like we got ourselves a hero. You alone, Cowboy." "Alone enough," Samuel replied calmly. "Let the woman go and ride out. Nobody needs to die tonight." "Big talk from one man facing four," another bandit said, this one tall and rail-thin with eyes that held the flat emptiness of a career criminal. "Maybe you should turn around and forget what you seen here." Samuel's response was to thumb back the hammer on his Colt, the metallic click loud in the sudden silence. Last chance. The thin bandit went for his gun first, and Samuel shot him through the shoulder before the man cleared leather. The canyon erupted in chaos, gunfire and shouting, the woman's scream cutting through it all. Samuel dove behind a boulder as bullets sparked off stone near his head. He fired twice more, methodical and precise, aiming to disable rather than kill. One bandit went down clutching his leg, howling curses. The scarred man tried to use the woman as a shield, dragging her upright by her hair, but Samuel had already moved, circling wide through the shadows. "Let her go," Samuel said quietly, emerging behind the man with his gun pressed against the bandit's spine. "Do it now." The scarred bandit froze, then released the woman with a shove that sent her stumbling forward. Samuel grabbed the man's pistol from its holster and tossed it away, then struck him hard across the temple with his revolver. The bandit collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. The fourth bandit, younger than the others and apparently less committed to the cause, had already mounted his horse and was spurring away into the deepening twilight. Samuel let him go. He holstered his weapon and turned to the woman, who had fallen to her knees near the fire, her entire body shaking. Her dark hair hung loose around her shoulders, tangled with bits of dried grass and dust, and her dress was torn at the sleeve, revealing a nasty bruise on her upper arm. But it was her eyes that caught him, deep brown and luminous with unshed tears, holding a mixture of relief and residual terror that made his heart clench. "You are safe now," he said gently, kneeling beside her and drawing his knife to cut her bonds. "They cannot hurt you anymore." The ropes fell away and she rubbed her chafed wrists, wincing at the pain. For a long moment she just stared at him as if unable to believe her ordeal was over. Then she whispered, her voice hoarse and trembling, "How can I ever repay you?" Samuel shook his head. "No need for that." "What is your name? Where are you from?" "Delilah," she managed, swallowing hard. "Delilah Abbott. I was traveling to Hill City from Rapid City when the stage was attacked yesterday morning. The other passengers scattered, but these men caught me. They killed the driver." Her voice broke on the last words and tears finally spilled down her cheeks. Samuel offered her his canteen and she drank gratefully, water trickling down her chin. "I am Samuel Crawford," he told her. "I work a ranch near Hill City. We need to get you somewhere safe. Can you ride?" Delilah nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Yes, I grew up on a farm in Ohio, but what about them?" She gestured toward the wounded bandits who were groaning on the ground. "I will take their weapons and horses," Samuel said. "They can walk back to whatever hole they crawled out of. If they are smart, they will leave the territory." He gathered the bandits' guns and gun belts, removing bullets and tossing them into the fire where they began to pop and hiss. The horses he tied together on a lead rope. The wounded men watched with hatred in their eyes but said nothing, apparently having learned their lesson about tangling with Samuel Crawford. Within 20 minutes, they were riding through the canyon as full darkness settled over the Black Hills. Samuel led the way on his gelding with Delilah mounted on one of the bandit horses, a decent sorrel mare with a white blaze. The spare horses followed behind on the lead. The temperature dropped quickly with nightfall, and Samuel noticed Delilah beginning to shiver despite the warm day they had left behind. Shock was setting in, he realized, her body finally reacting to the trauma she had endured. He found a sheltered spot beneath an overhang of rock where wind could not reach and where the stone still held warmth from the day's sun. "We will camp here tonight," he told her. "Hill City is still 10 miles off and the trail is too dangerous in darkness." Delilah dismounted stiffly, barely able to stand. Samuel caught her elbow to steady her and felt the tremors running through her frame. He quickly unsaddled the horses and hobbled them where they could reach some grass, then built a small fire using deadfall he found nearby. From his saddlebags he produced jerky, hardtack, and a wool blanket which he wrapped around Delilah's shoulders. She sat close to the flames, still shaking, her eyes distant and unfocused. Samuel had seen this before in men who survived battles, the way the mind struggled to comprehend what the body had endured. He sat beside her and spoke quietly about ordinary things: the weather, the cattle he had been tracking, the town of Hill City and its growing population as gold continued to draw fortune seekers to the Black Hills. Gradually, Delilah's shaking subsided and awareness returned to her gaze. She looked at him in the firelight, and he was struck by how beautiful she was despite her disheveled state, with delicate features and an intelligence in her eyes that spoke of education and strength. "Thank you," she said softly. "I thought I was going to die." "They said terrible things about what they planned to do. You do not have to think about that now," Samuel told her. "You are safe. But how did you find me? Were you following them? No, just luck, I suppose, or providence." He poked at the fire with a stick. "I was tracking rustled cattle and happened upon their camp. I could not ride past knowing they had you prisoner." Delilah pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Most men would have. It was dangerous what you did. You could have been killed. Samuel shrugged. My father taught me that a man who sees wrong and does nothing about it is no man at all. I could not leave you there. Something shifted in Delilah's expression, a softening that made her eyes bright in the firelight. You are very different from most men I have known. Where I come from, people mostly keep to themselves and their own concerns. Where is that exactly? You said Ohio, Columbus, Delilah confirmed. I came west after my father died 6 months ago. He was a banker and left me enough money to start fresh somewhere new. I had been corresponding with a school in Hill City about a teaching position. I am supposed to meet with the school board next week. She paused, her brow furrowing. I was supposed to, anyway. Now I have lost everything, my trunk with all my belongings, my letters of reference, even the money I was carrying. It was all on the stage. The stage might still be where they abandoned it, Samuel said. We can look for it tomorrow on our way to town. And even if we cannot find it, Hill City is a decent place. People will help you. Delilah studied him for a long moment, and Samuel felt something pass between them, an understanding or recognition he could not quite name. Why are you being so kind to me? You do not even know me. Do I need a reason beyond it being the right thing to do? Samuel asked. But even as he spoke, he knew there was more to it than simple morality. Something about this woman drew him, made him want to protect her and see her smile. It was a feeling both unfamiliar and compelling, and it unsettled him in ways he did not want to examine too closely. They ate a sparse meal of jerky and hardtack washed down with water from Samuel's canteen. Delilah told him more about her life in Ohio, about growing up as an only child with a father who believed women deserved education as much as men. She had attended female seminary and then taught at a small school in Columbus, until her father's death from influenza had left her alone and grieving. The West had seemed like a place to escape painful memories and build a new life. I suppose I was naive to think I could just start over, she said with a rueful smile. My first real day in the territory, and I am attacked by bandits and left for dead. That is not how it usually goes, Samuel assured her. Hill City is civilized mostly. We have law and order, churches, proper schools. You will like it there. What about you? Delilah asked. Have you always lived in Dakota territory? Samuel shook his head. I was born in Texas, down near San Antonio. My parents had a small ranch, but drought killed most of the herd when I was 15. My father died trying to save what remained, and my mother passed from grief not long after. I drifted north, working ranches wherever I could find employment. Ended up in the Black Hills 5 years ago and stayed because the country suited me. I am sorry about your parents, Delilah said softly. It is hard to lose the people who raised you. It is, Samuel agreed, but life goes on. We do what we must to survive. They fell into comfortable silence, listening to the fire crackle and the distant howl of a coyote echoing through the canyons. Samuel added more wood to the flames and arranged his saddle as a pillow on one side of the fire. He offered Delilah the blanket and took his bedroll for himself, placing his gun within easy reach. You should try to sleep, he told her. I will keep watch. You cannot stay awake all night, Delilah protested. You must be exhausted too. I have done it before, Samuel said with a slight smile. Besides, I want to make sure those bandits do not come looking for revenge or their horses. Delilah regarded him with an expression he could not quite read, then nodded and lay down near the fire, wrapping herself in the blanket. Samuel watched her for a while, noting how the firelight played across her face and made her dark hair gleam like polished wood. She was a stranger, someone he had known for mere hours, yet he felt protective of her in a way that went beyond duty or chivalry. It was as if rescuing her had created a bond between them, something fragile but real. The night passed slowly. Samuel dozed occasionally but remained alert, his senses attuned to any sound that might signal danger. Delilah slept fitfully, waking several times with small cries that subsided when Samuel spoke reassurance. Toward dawn, she finally fell into deeper sleep, her breathing even and steady, and Samuel allowed himself to close his eyes properly as the eastern sky began to pale. He woke to full daylight and the smell of coffee. Delilah was crouched by the fire, using Samuel's small pot to boil water with grounds from his saddlebags. She looked better in morning light, the terror gone from her eyes though weariness remained in the set of her shoulders. "Good morning," she said when she noticed him stirring. "I hope you do not mind. I found your coffee and thought we could both use some." "Mind? I am grateful," Samuel said, sitting up and accepting the tin cup she poured for him. The coffee was strong and hot, exactly what he needed. "You did not have to do that. After all you have done for me, making coffee is the least I can manage." Delilah settled across from him with her own cup. In daylight, he could see the full extent of her dishevelment. Her dress was not just torn but filthy, her face smudged with dirt, her hair a tangled mess. Yet she held herself with dignity, her back straight and her chin raised. "I was thinking about what you said last night about finding the stage. Do you really think it might still be there?" "Depends on how far those bandits took you from the attack site," Samuel said. "But it is worth looking. Which direction were you coming from when they stopped the stage?" Delilah frowned in concentration. "We had left Rapid City heading southeast. The attack happened maybe 2 hours into the journey, along a stretch with high rocks on both sides. I remember because I thought what a perfect spot it was for an ambush just before it happened." Samuel nodded slowly. "I know that area. It is about 15 miles northwest of Hill City. If they took you on foot from there to where I found you, they likely moved 4 or 5 miles at most. We might be able to backtrack." They broke camp quickly, stamping out the fire and saddling the horses. Samuel gave Delilah some water to wash her face and hands, and she did her best to comb her hair with her fingers before tying it back with a strip of cloth torn from her already ruined dress. The gesture was oddly touching, this attempt at maintaining propriety despite everything she had been through. They rode northwest following game trails and dry washes, with Samuel reading the landscape for signs of passage. Twice, he found tracks he thought might belong to the bandits, and he followed these patiently until they led to a broader trail that showed evidence of a wagon recently passing. His pulse quickened. This could be the stage route. "Look there," Delilah said suddenly, pointing ahead to where sunlight glinted off something metallic. They urged their horses forward and found the stagecoach tilted at an angle off the trail, one wheel broken and the team of horses gone. The driver's body had been removed, likely by the bandits for whatever valuables he carried. But Delilah's trunk lay smashed open on the ground with clothing scattered around it. Delilah dismounted and began gathering her belongings with trembling hands. Samuel helped her, collecting dresses and undergarments and books, trying not to feel awkward about handling such personal items. Most of her things were there, though anything valuable had clearly been taken. No jewelry, no money, no watch that might have belonged to her father. "My letters," Delilah said desperately, sifting through papers. "I need my letters of reference for the teaching position." Samuel found them tucked inside a leather portfolio that had been tossed aside, apparently worthless to thieves interested only in items they could sell or spend. He handed the portfolio to Delilah, and she clutched it to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "Thank God," she whispered. "These are all I have. Without them, I have no way to prove who I am or what I am qualified to do." They repacked her trunk as best they could and secured it to one of the spare horses. It took time and care to balance the load properly, but Samuel had packed many a horse in his years and knew the tricks. While he worked, Delilah changed into a fresh dress behind the tilted stagecoach, emerging in a simple blue cotton that, while travel-worn, was at least clean and intact. She had managed to properly comb her hair as well, and the transformation was remarkable. She looked like a respectable young woman again rather than a victim of violence. "Much better," Samuel said with an approving nod. "Now let us get you to Hill City." The ride took 4 hours at a steady pace, following the stage route through rolling hills covered in prairie grass and wildflowers. The Black Hills proper rose dark and forested to their west, while to the east the land opened into the Great Plains. It was beautiful country, vast and untamed, and Samuel found himself pointing out landmarks and wildlife to Delilah as they rode. She was an attentive audience, asking intelligent questions about the territory and its history. "I have read about the gold rush," she said at one point. "Is it true that men have become millionaires practically overnight?" "Some have," Samuel confirmed, "though most just break their backs for nothing. The big strikes happened years ago now. These days it is mostly mining companies doing the work, not individual prospectors. Hill City started as a mining camp but has settled into being a proper town." "What made you choose ranching over mining?" Delilah asked. Samuel considered the question. "I like working with animals and land. Mining is just digging holes in the ground, taking without giving back. Ranching feels more honest to me. You raise something, care for it, help it grow. There is satisfaction in that." "You have a poet's soul," Delilah observed with a slight smile, the first genuine one he had seen from her. It transformed her face, making her eyes sparkle with warmth. "Never been called that before," Samuel said, feeling heat rise to his cheeks. "Most would say I am just a simple cowhand who talks too much." "There is nothing simple about you, Samuel Crawford," Delilah said quietly, and the way she spoke his name made something flutter in his chest. Hill City appeared in the distance around noon, a sprawl of wooden buildings clustered in a valley with the forested hills rising behind. The main street was wide and lined with businesses, mercantiles, saloons, a hotel, a church with a white steeple. People moved about their business, and the sound of a hammer striking an anvil rang from the blacksmith shop. It looked peaceful and prosperous, exactly the kind of place where someone could build a new life. Samuel led them to the hotel, a 2-story structure called the Dakota House that had a reputation for cleanliness and decent food. The proprietor, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Harriet Wells, took one look at Delilah's exhausted face and immediately began fussing over her. "You poor dear, you look completely done in," Mrs. Wells clucked. "Samuel Crawford, what have you gotten this young lady into?" "It is rather what he got me out of," Delilah said, finding another small smile. She briefly explained her ordeal while Mrs. Wells listened with growing outrage. "Bandits on the stage route, that is unacceptable. Someone needs to inform the marshal at once." Mrs. Wells turned to Samuel. "Did you catch the villains?" "Shot 2 of them and sent the others running," Samuel replied. "They should not be causing trouble again anytime soon, but the marshal will want to know. I will stop by his office after I see Miss Abbott settled." "Nonsense. I can handle getting her settled," Mrs. Wells said firmly. "You go tell Marshal Bridger what happened. Miss Abbott needs a hot bath and a proper meal and about 12 hours of sleep, and I can provide all of that." She took Delilah's arm in a motherly fashion. "Come along, dear. We will get you sorted out." Delilah glanced back at Samuel as Mrs. Wells guided her toward the stairs. "Thank you again," she said, "for everything. I hope I will see you again soon." "You will," Samuel promised, though he was not sure how he could guarantee such a thing. As he watched her disappear upstairs, he felt an odd emptiness, as if something important was being taken away from him. He took Delilah's trunk and the spare horses to the livery stable where the owner, a grizzled man named Pete, agreed to keep them until Delilah could make proper arrangements. Then Samuel walked to the marshal's office, a small building at the end of Main Street marked by a wooden sign with a star painted on it. Marshal Thomas Bridger was a capable lawman in his mid-40s with iron-gray hair and shrewd eyes. He listened carefully as Samuel recounted the events of the previous day, occasionally asking questions to clarify details. "You say you shot 2 of them?" the marshal asked. "Shoulder and leg wounds," Samuel confirmed. "I was not trying to kill them, just stop them." "Might have been better if you had," Bridger said bluntly. "Men like that do not learn. They will heal up and go right back to robbing stages, but I appreciate you showing restraint." He made notes in a ledger. "Can you describe them?" Samuel provided descriptions of all 4 bandits, particularly the scarred man who seemed to be the leader. Bridger nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds like the Cutter gang. They have been operating in the northern hills for about 6 months. We have paper on them, but they have been clever about avoiding capture. If you wounded 2 of them like you say, maybe we can finally track them down while they are laid up somewhere." "I hope you do," Samuel said. "They killed the stage driver and terrorized Miss Abbott. They deserve to face justice." "They will," Bridger promised. "I will send word to the territorial marshal and organize a posse. We will comb those canyons until we find them." He closed his ledger and regarded Samuel with something like approval. "You did good work, Crawford. That woman owes you her life." Samuel left the marshal's office feeling restless and uncertain. His duty was discharged. He had rescued Delilah, returned her to safety, and reported the crime to proper authorities. There was no reason he could not simply go back to his work at the Double Bar Ranch and forget about the whole affair. Yet he found himself walking back toward the Dakota house, telling himself he just wanted to make sure Delilah was all right. Mrs. Wells intercepted him in the hotel lobby with a knowing look. "She is sleeping," the older woman said. "I gave her the room at the end of the hall on the 2nd floor, the one with the nice view of the hills. She had a bath and ate some stew and practically fell asleep at the table." "That poor girl has been through an ordeal. Will she be all right?" Samuel asked. "Physically, yes. Emotionally, that will take time." Mrs. Wells studied Samuel with shrewd eyes. "You have taken quite an interest in her, haven't you?" "I just want to make sure she is safe," Samuel protested. Mrs. Wells said skeptically. "Well, she will be staying here at least a week until she can meet with the school board and find more permanent lodging. I imagine you will find reasons to check on her during that time." Samuel felt his cheeks warm. "I should get back to the ranch. My boss will be wondering where I am." "Of course," Mrs. Wells said with a smile that suggested she saw right through him. "But I am sure we will see you again soon, Samuel Crawford." The ride back to the Double Bar Ranch took an hour, giving Samuel plenty of time to think about Delilah Abbott and the strange feelings she stirred in him. He had known many women in his 26 years, had even courted a few, but none had affected him quite like this. Perhaps it was the circumstances of their meeting, the intensity of rescuing her from danger. Or perhaps it was something deeper, a connection he sensed but could not name. His boss, James Caldwell, was a fair man in his 50s who ran the Double Bar with a firm but reasonable hand. He listened to Samuel's story without interruption, then nodded slowly. "You did the right thing coming to that woman's aid. I am proud to have a man of your character working for me." "Thank you, sir," Samuel said. "I will make up the time I lost." "No need for that," Caldwell said. "Consider it paid time. But I do want you to ride out tomorrow and check on that rustled cattle. We are still missing about 30 head and I want to know where they ended up." Samuel spent the rest of the day working around the ranch, mending fences and helping break a young horse to saddle. The physical labor helped clear his mind, though thoughts of Delilah kept intruding at odd moments. That night in the bunkhouse, he lay awake long after the other ranch hands had fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling and wondering if he would see her again. He returned to Hill City 3 days later on his day off, telling himself he just needed supplies from the mercantile. But his feet carried him first to the Dakota house, where Mrs. Wells greeted him with a knowing smile. "She is taking a walk," the older woman said before Samuel could ask. "Down by the creek at the south end of town. She has been going there every afternoon to clear her head." Samuel found Delilah sitting on a flat rock beside the creek, watching water flow over smooth stones. She wore a pale green dress and had her hair pinned up in a style that made her look both elegant and approachable. She seemed lost in thought and did not notice his approach until he spoke. "Miss Abbott, it is good to see you looking well." Delilah turned with a startled expression that melted into a warm smile. "Samuel, I was hoping I might see you again. Please sit down." He settled onto the rock beside her, close enough to talk comfortably but maintaining a respectful distance. "How are you feeling? Any better?" "Much," Delilah said. "Mrs. Wells has been wonderful and people in town have been very kind. The doctor checked me over and says I have no lasting injuries. Mostly I was just frightened and exhausted." She paused. "I keep thinking about what might have happened if you had not come along. It gives me nightmares." "You are safe now," Samuel reminded her gently. "Those men cannot hurt you anymore, I know, and I have you to thank for that." Delilah met his eyes directly. "I have been trying to think of how to properly thank you, but nothing seems adequate. You saved my life, Samuel." "How does anyone repay that?" "You do not need to repay me," Samuel said firmly. "I did what any decent man would do." "But not every man is decent," Delilah countered. "Surely you know that." She looked down at her hands folded in her lap. "Before I came west, people warned me it was dangerous and uncivilized. They said I was foolish to travel alone. I thought I was being brave and independent, but maybe I was just naive." "There is nothing wrong with wanting to start fresh," Samuel said. "And you are not alone anymore. You have friends here now." "Do I?" Delilah asked, glancing at him with something hopeful in her expression. "Are we friends, Samuel?" The question hung between them, weighted with meaning that went beyond the simple words. Samuel considered carefully before answering. "I would like to think so. I would like to see you again if you are willing." "I would like that very much," Delilah said softly, and the smile she gave him made his heart race. They talked for over an hour beside the creek, conversation flowing easily between them. Delilah told Samuel about her upcoming meeting with the school board, scheduled for 2 days hence. She was nervous but excited about the prospect of teaching, having always loved working with children. Samuel told her more about ranch life and his responsibilities as foreman, about the hard work and long hours, but also the satisfaction of seeing calves grow strong and watching grass flourish where you had planted it. "You really do love what you do," Delilah observed. "I can hear it in your voice when you talk about the land and animals." "I suppose I do," Samuel admitted. "It is a good life, even if it is not an easy one. A man knows where he stands when he works with cattle and horses. They are honest in a way people often are not." "Present company accepted, I hope," Delilah said with a teasing smile. "Present company especially," Samuel replied, and was rewarded with a laugh that sounded like music. When he finally rode back to the double bar that evening, Samuel felt lighter than he had in years. The memory of Delilah's smile and the sound of her laughter played through his mind like a favorite song. He found himself already planning his next trip to town, already thinking of things he wanted to show her and places he wanted to take her. The days developed a rhythm. Samuel would work hard at the ranch during the week, then ride into Hill City on his days off to spend time with Delilah. She met with the school board and was hired to start teaching in the fall when the term began, giving her 3 months to prepare and settle into her new life. Mrs. Wells helped her find a small house to rent near the schoolhouse, a tidy 2-room cottage with a garden plot and a view of the hills. Samuel helped Delilah move her few belongings into the cottage, along with furniture donated by townspeople who had heard her story and wanted to help. He repaired the leaky roof and fixed the sticking door and helped her plant vegetables in the garden. These simple domestic tasks felt strangely intimate, like they were building something together beyond mere friendship. "You have done so much for me," Delilah said one afternoon as they worked side by side in the garden, her hands deep in soil as she planted tomato seedlings. "I do not know how I would have managed all this alone." "You would have figured it out," Samuel said. "You are stronger than you give yourself credit for." "Maybe," Delilah allowed, "but I am glad I do not have to be strong alone. Having you here makes everything easier." Their eyes met over the garden bed, and Samuel felt the air between them charged with unspoken feeling. He wanted to say something, to tell her that she had become the bright center of his world, that he thought about her constantly when they were apart. But the words stuck in his throat, held back by uncertainty and fear of presuming too much. Instead, he focused on patting soil around the tomato plants, giving them water from the well, showing Delilah the best techniques he had learned from years of gardening at the ranch. She was an attentive student, asking questions and absorbing information quickly. Samuel found himself charmed by everything about her, the way she pushed stray hair from her face with the back of her wrist, the little sound of satisfaction she made when a plant was properly settled, the smudge of dirt on her cheek that she did not seem to notice. "You have some soil right here," he said finally, reaching out to brush it away. His fingers grazed her cheek and Delilah went very still, her eyes wide and dark. The moment stretched between them, pregnant with possibility, and Samuel felt his heart hammering against his ribs. "Samuel," Delilah whispered, and the way she said his name was like a question and an answer all at once. He leaned toward her slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. Instead, she met him halfway, her lips soft and warm against his in a kiss that tasted of sunshine and possibility. It was gentle and tentative, a first kiss that held the promise of countless more. When they separated, both were breathing faster and both were smiling. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks," Samuel admitted. "I have been hoping you would," Delilah replied, her cheeks flushed with pleasure. "I was beginning to think you saw me only as a responsibility, someone you felt obligated to help." "No," Samuel said firmly, taking her hand in his. "You are so much more than that, Delilah. You have become important to me in ways I am still learning to understand. When I am with you, everything feels right. When we are apart, I count the hours until I can see you again." Delilah's eyes shone with tears, but they were happy tears. "I feel the same way. From that first night when you found me, I knew you were different, special. And as I have gotten to know you these past weeks, I have realized I am falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, brave and vulnerable and true. Samuel squeezed her hand. "I am falling in love with you too. Maybe I have been since the moment I saw you shivering in that canyon." They kissed again, longer this time and with more certainty. Samuel cupped Delilah's face in his hands, feeling her smile against his lips. The garden forgotten, they sat together in the afternoon sun, talking about feelings they had been holding back and making tentative plans for a future that suddenly seemed bright with promise. I will have to work all summer to save money, Samuel said. But by fall, maybe by the time you start teaching, I could have enough to start thinking about a place of my own, maybe even a small spread where I could run some cattle. That sounds wonderful, Delilah said, though I would be content in a tent as long as I was with you. You deserve better than a tent, Samuel said firmly. You deserve a real home, a place where you can feel safe and build the life you came west to find. I think I have already found it, Delilah said softly, resting her head against his shoulder. Right here with you. Summer passed in a golden haze of courtship and discovery. Samuel worked harder than ever at the double bar, taking on extra responsibilities and saving every dollar he could spare. James Caldwell, who had noticed Samuel's frequent trips to town and correctly guessed the reason, gave him a raise and hinted that there might be opportunities for advancement if Samuel continued to prove himself. You have always been my best worker, Caldwell told him one evening. But lately you have been downright inspired. Must be some powerful motivation driving you. Just trying to build a future, sir, Samuel said carefully. For 2 instead of 1, I would wager, Caldwell replied with a knowing look. I met Miss Abbott at church last Sunday. She seems like a fine woman, Samuel, smart and kind. You could do a lot worse. I know I could, Samuel said. I count myself lucky she gave me the time of day. Caldwell clapped him on the shoulder. Luck favors the prepared. You keep working hard and saving smart, and by this time next year you could be starting your own operation. I might even know of some land that is coming available, good grazing with water rights. Hope kindled in Samuel's chest. The thought of having his own ranch, modest though it might be, felt like the culmination of everything he had worked toward since leaving Texas a decade ago. And having Delilah beside him as he built that dream made it all the more precious. He proposed on a clear August evening as they sat on the porch of her cottage watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. He had spent weeks planning the moment, wanting it to be perfect, but when the time came he found his carefully rehearsed speech deserting him. Instead he simply took Delilah's hand and spoke from his heart. I do not have much to offer you yet, he began. No land of my own, no house, not even a ring worthy of you, but I have love, Delilah, more love than I knew one person could feel for another. And I have determination to build a life we can both be proud of. So I am asking, even though I probably should wait until I have more to give, will you marry me? Will you take a chance on a cowboy who promises to spend every day trying to make you happy? Delilah's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling through them. Yes, she said simply. Yes, Samuel, I will marry you, and you do not need to offer me more than you have because what you have is everything I want. Your love, your kindness, your strength. That is enough. You are enough. They sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted of tears and joy and infinite possibility. Then, Samuel produced a simple silver band he had bought from the mercantile with a week's wages, apologizing that it was not the gold and diamonds she deserved. Delilah slipped it onto her finger and declared it the most beautiful ring she had ever seen. News of their engagement spread quickly through Hill City, met with general approval and good wishes. Mrs. Wells fussed over wedding plans. The church ladies offered to help with preparations, and even Marshall Bridger, who had successfully captured 2 members of the Cutter gang thanks to Samuel's descriptions, stopped by to offer congratulations. You two make a fine couple, the marshal said. And Miss Abbott has proven herself a resilient woman. She testified at the Bandits' trial without flinching, helped put them away for 10 years hard labor. That takes backbone. She has plenty of that, Samuel agreed proudly. Delilah had indeed faced her attackers in court, her voice steady as she recounted her ordeal. Samuel had been there to support her, But she had not needed him. She had been strong and clear and unafraid. Watching her had made him fall even deeper in love. They set a wedding date for mid-September, after the last of the summer work was done, but before fall roundup demanded all of Samuel's time. James Caldwell offered the use of his large house for the reception, and his wife Mary promised to bake a proper cake. The whole town seemed invested in their happiness, and Samuel felt blessed beyond measure. In early September, Caldwell made good on his hint about available land. A neighbor to the west had decided to sell out and return east, offering 160 acres with good grass, timber, and a creek running through it. The price was more than fair for a man looking to get out quickly, but it was still more money than Samuel had saved. "I can loan you the difference," Caldwell offered when Samuel explained the situation. "Pay me back over the next 5 years from your ranch profits. I know you are good for it, and I would rather see that land go to someone who will work it properly than to some speculator who will let it go to ruin." Samuel was deeply moved by his employer's faith in him. "I will not let you down, sir. You have my word on that." "I know you will not," Caldwell said. "You are the most reliable man I have ever known, Samuel Crawford. Now go tell that fiancé of yours that you are about to become a landowner." Delilah cried when he told her, happy tears that dampened his shirt as she hugged him tight. "This is really happening," she kept saying. "We are really going to build a life together." "We really are," Samuel confirmed, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I want to start building a house before winter. Nothing fancy at first, just 2 rooms and a proper fireplace." "But it will be ours, Delilah. All ours." They spent hours planning their future home, sketching rough designs and arguing pleasantly about where to place windows and whether the fireplace should be on the north or south wall. Samuel had some experience with carpentry and knew he could do most of the work himself with help from other ranch hands who owed him favors. They would start with a simple structure and expand as money and time allowed. The week before their wedding, Samuel took Delilah to see the land that would be their home. They rode out in early morning when mist still clung to the valleys and the air smelled of approaching autumn. The property was beautiful, with rolling meadows for grazing, stands of pine and aspen for timber, and the creek running clear and cold through the center of it all. A slight rise near the creek offered the perfect spot for a house, with views across the meadows and shelter from winter winds. "It is perfect," Delilah breathed, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "Samuel, this is more than I ever dreamed of." "This is just the beginning," Samuel promised, wrapping his arms around her from behind as they stood on the rise where their house would soon stand. "We will make this place into something special together. Raise cattle and children here, build something that lasts." Delilah turned in his embrace to face him, her expression serious. "You want children, Samuel? We have not really talked about that." "I do," he said honestly. "Not right away if you are not ready, but someday, yes. I would like to teach a son to work cattle and ride horses, or a daughter for that matter. I think you would be a wonderful mother." "I think you would be a wonderful father," Delilah replied, reaching up to touch his face. "Patient and kind and strong. Our children will be very lucky." They stood together on the rise as the sun climbed higher, burning away mist and painting the meadows gold. Samuel tried to imagine this place 5 years, 10 years in the future, a solid house instead of empty ground, fenced pastures instead of wild grass, children's laughter echoing across the creek. It seemed almost too good to be true, yet Delilah's presence beside him made it real. Their wedding day dawned clear and bright, one of those perfect September days when the sky is impossibly blue and the air carries just a hint of autumn crispness. The ceremony took place in Hill City's small church, with most of the town in attendance. Delilah wore a simple white dress she had sewn herself with help from Mrs. Wells and other women from town. Samuel wore his best shirt and trousers, boots polished to a shine and hair neatly trimmed. As they stood before the minister and exchanged vows, Samuel felt the weight and wonder of the promises they were making. To love and cherish in sickness and health for better or worse, until death parted them. These were not empty words but sacred commitments, and he meant every syllable with his whole heart. I, Samuel Marcus Crawford, take you, Delilah Rose Abbott, to be my lawfully wedded wife, he said clearly, his voice steady despite the emotion tightening his throat. I promise to love you faithfully, to protect and provide for you, to stand by your side in all circumstances. You are my partner, my joy, my home. This I vow before God and these witnesses. Delilah's vows were equally heartfelt, her voice soft but certain. I, Delilah Rose Abbott, take you, Samuel Marcus Crawford, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you with all my heart, to support your dreams, to build a life of meaning and purpose with you. You saved me in more ways than one, and I will spend my life showing you what that means to me. This I vow before God and these witnesses. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed his bride tenderly as the congregation applauded. Walking back down the aisle with Delilah's hand in his, seeing the joy on faces of friends and neighbors, Samuel felt a completeness he had never experienced before. This woman beside him was his future, his family, his everything. The reception at the Caldwell house was festive and warm, with food and music and dancing that lasted into the evening. James Caldwell made a toast praising Samuel's character and wishing the couple every happiness. Mrs. Wells cried happily and declared it the most beautiful wedding she had attended in 30 years. Even Marshall Bridger showed up with a gift of a new rifle for their homestead, saying every ranch needed proper protection. As night fell and stars emerged, Samuel and Delilah slipped away from the celebration and rode out to their land. Samuel had prepared a surprise, a large tent erected on the rise where their house would stand, furnished with a proper bed and lanterns, and everything needed for a comfortable night. It was their wedding night and the first night of their life together, and he wanted it to be special. Samuel, this is wonderful, Delilah exclaimed when she saw the arrangement. You thought of everything. I wanted our first night as husband and wife to be on our own land, he explained, suddenly shy. I hope that is all right. It is more than all right, it is perfect. Delilah moved into his arms and they stood together under the stars, listening to the creek murmur and coyotes sing in the distance. I love you, Samuel Crawford. I loved you when you rescued me from those bandits, and I love you more now than I thought possible. I love you too, Delilah Crawford, Samuel said, marveling at how right her new name sounded. More than words can express. They spent their wedding night wrapped in each other's arms, speaking in whispers and gentle touches, learning the intimacy of marriage with tenderness and joy. Outside the tent, the wind sighed through pine trees and the creek sang its endless song. Inside, two people who had found each other against all odds began building a life together. The following months were filled with hard work and steady progress. Samuel continued working for James Caldwell while spending every spare hour building their house. Other ranch hands helped when they could, and even townspeople from Hill City volunteered time and labor. By late October, the house was finished 2 rooms with a stone fireplace, a solid roof, and real glass windows. It was modest but sturdy, built to last. Delilah had started her teaching position and proved to be natural at it, beloved by her students and respected by their parents. She would leave early each morning for the schoolhouse in town, riding the gentle mare Samuel had bought for her, and return each evening to help with work on their homestead. Together they built corrals and a small barn, planted winter wheat, and bought their first cattle, 10 pregnant cows, and a bull purchased with money Samuel had saved. Their first winter in the house was hard but happy. Snow fell heavy in the Black Hills and temperatures plunged below zero, but their fireplace kept the house warm, and their love kept their spirits bright. They would spend evenings reading together, Delilah often preparing lessons for her students while Samuel worked on accounts for the ranch. Sometimes they would just talk, sharing dreams and memories, learning the 1,000 small things that spouses learn about each other. "Are you happy?" Samuel asked one night as they lay in bed with firelight flickering across the ceiling. "Truly happy." "This is a hard life, especially for someone raised in a city." "I am happier than I have ever been," Delilah assured him, snuggling closer to his warmth. "Yes, it is hard work, but it is honest work. We are building something together, Samuel. Every fence post we set, every calf that is born, every day of teaching those children, it all means something. I would not trade this for anything. Even if it means cold mornings and rough hands and being miles from the nearest theater or fine restaurant," Samuel pressed, wanting to be certain. Delilah propped herself up on one elbow to look at him seriously. "You know what I think about when I remember my life in Columbus. I remember being lonely. I had material comforts and social position, but I was lonely, Samuel. My father worked constantly and had little time for me. The women I knew were concerned only with fashion and gossip. I felt like I was living a half-life, just going through motions. But here, with you, I feel fully alive. Every day matters. You matter. This matters." She gestured around their simple room. "I would rather have rough hands and a full heart than soft hands and an empty soul." Samuel pulled her back down into his arms, overwhelmed with love for this woman who had chosen a hard life with him over easier paths she could have taken. "You are extraordinary, Delilah Crawford." "I am the luckiest man alive." "We are both lucky," Delilah corrected. "Lucky that those bandits attacked the stage in a place where you would hear the commotion. Lucky that you were brave enough to help. Lucky that we found each other." "Maybe luck," Samuel agreed, "or maybe something more. Maybe we were meant to find each other." "I like to think so," Delilah whispered, and they fell asleep wrapped together as snow fell softly outside their windows. Spring brought new life to their ranch. The cows delivered healthy calves, increasing their herd. Samuel built a chicken coop, and Delilah filled it with hens that provided eggs and occasional meat. They planted a large garden, and Delilah proved to have a natural talent for growing things, producing vegetables in abundance. The ranch began to feel like a real homestead, a place with history and purpose. In May, Delilah told Samuel she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but waited to be certain before sharing the news. Samuel received it with joy and trepidation: joy at the thought of becoming a father, trepidation at the added responsibility and the dangers that childbirth presented, especially this far from doctors and hospitals. "We will be fine," Delilah assured him, reading his concern. "Women have been having babies for thousands of years, most of them in circumstances far more primitive than ours. And Mrs. Wells used to be a midwife. She has already offered to help when the time comes." "I just want you to be safe," Samuel said, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Both of you. We will be," Delilah promised. "You will make sure of that, just like you have kept me safe from the moment we met." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through summer and into fall. Delilah continued teaching until her condition became too obvious, then handed her classes to a temporary replacement with plans to return the following year. She remained active around the ranch, insisting she was not made of glass and needed to stay busy. Samuel worried constantly, but tried not to smother her with overprotection, knowing she valued her independence. In December, with the first serious snow already on the ground, Delilah went into labor. Mrs. Wells came out from town despite the weather, along with Mary Caldwell, who had experience helping with births. The labor lasted through the night and into the next morning, long hours during which Samuel paced outside the bedroom door feeling helpless and terrified. He had faced down armed bandits without flinching, but listening to his wife's cries of pain was the hardest thing he had ever endured. Finally, as dawn light crept through the windows, a baby's cry pierced the air. Mrs. Wells emerged from the bedroom with a tired smile. "You have a son, Samuel. A healthy, strong boy, and your wife is doing well." Samuel entered the bedroom to find Delilah propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "Samuel, come meet your son." He approached carefully as if walking on sacred ground and looked down at the tiny red face peering from the blankets. His son. His child. The reality of it crashed over him like a wave. This tiny, fragile human was his responsibility, his legacy, his future. "He is perfect," Samuel whispered, touching one impossibly small hand with his finger. The baby's fist closed around it with surprising strength. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but never quite settled on one. Now Delilah said softly, "I want to name him after your father, Thomas Samuel Crawford, so he carries your family forward." Samuel felt his throat tighten with emotion. His father had been dead more than 10 years, but the thought of honoring him this way moved Samuel deeply. "Thomas Samuel Crawford," he repeated. "That is a strong name, a good name." "Then it is settled," Delilah said, smiling down at their son. "Welcome to the world, Thomas. You have a father who will move mountains for you and a mother who already loves you more than her own life." The first months of fatherhood were challenging and wonderful in equal measure. Thomas was a good baby, healthy and strong, but he demanded constant attention. Samuel found himself waking at all hours to help with feedings and changes, amazed at how something so small could require so much work. But watching Delilah with their son, seeing the fierce love in her eyes as she cradled Thomas, made every sleepless night worthwhile. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Samuel expanded the herd, built additional structures, improved the land. James Caldwell eventually retired and sold his ranch to a company, but he recommended Samuel as someone capable of running a significant operation. This led to opportunities for Samuel to sell cattle at better prices and establish relationships with buyers in Rapid City and beyond. By the time Thomas was 2 years old, the Crawford Ranch had become one of the more successful small operations in the region. Samuel was able to hire 2 ranch hands to help with the work, freeing up time for him to spend with his family. Delilah had returned to teaching part-time with Mrs. Wells, watching Thomas during the hours she was at the schoolhouse. Life had settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable and satisfying. One evening in early summer, Samuel and Delilah sat on their porch watching Thomas play in the yard, chasing chickens and laughing with pure joy. The sun was setting behind the Black Hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The air smelled of grass and wildflowers and growing things. "You remember the night I asked how I could repay you?" Delilah said suddenly, breaking a comfortable silence. Samuel smiled at the memory. "I remember. You were shivering and frightened, and I told you there was no need for repayment." "I have thought about that night so many times," Delilah continued, "about how my life could have ended there in that canyon or taken a completely different path. And I have decided how to answer that question." "Oh," Samuel looked at her curiously. "And what answer did you arrive at?" Delilah took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "You gave me my life back that night. You cannot repay a gift like that. But what I can do, what I have been doing every day since, is live that life in a way that honors the gift. By being the best wife I can be, the best mother, the best teacher, the best person. By loving you with everything I have. By building this life we share. That is my answer, Samuel. That is how I repay you, by living fully and well by your side for all our days." Samuel felt tears prick his eyes. He pulled Delilah close and kissed her forehead. "You have already repaid me 1,000 times over. You have given me love and a family and a purpose. You have made me happier than I ever thought possible. If anything, I am the one in your debt." "Then we are even," Delilah said with a soft laugh. "Two people who saved each other." They sat together as the sun completed its descent and stars began to emerge in the darkening sky. Thomas eventually tired of his game and came running to them, and Samuel scooped him up, settling the boy on his lap. The three of them sat together on the porch of the house they had built, surrounded by the land they had tamed, living the life they had created together. Years continued to pass in a steady march of seasons and growing prosperity. The Crawford Ranch became known throughout the region for quality cattle and fair dealing. Samuel's reputation grew along with his business, and he was elected to the town council of Hill City, giving him a voice in decisions that shaped the community's future. He took this responsibility seriously, always remembering what it meant to struggle and wanting to ensure opportunities existed for others who, like him, were trying to build something from nothing. Delilah continued teaching and became one of the most beloved figures in Hill City. Her students went on to successful lives, many of them crediting her with instilling in them a love of learning. She also began writing about her experiences in the West, publishing articles in Eastern newspapers and magazines that presented a more nuanced view of frontier life than the sensationalized accounts that dominated popular media. When Thomas was 4 years old, Delilah gave birth to a daughter they named Margaret Rose, after Samuel's mother. 2 years later came another son, James, named for James Caldwell, who had given Samuel his start in ranching. The house was expanded to accommodate the growing family, adding bedrooms and a proper dining room and a study where Delilah could write and Samuel could manage ranch accounts. The children grew up healthy and happy, learning early the value of hard work and family loyalty. Thomas showed his father's natural ability with horses and cattle, while Margaret had her mother's love of books and teaching. James was the adventurous one, always exploring and getting into minor trouble, keeping his parents on their toes. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Samuel took Delilah back to the canyon where he had rescued her all those years ago. They had not returned since that fateful night, but Samuel felt it was important to revisit the place where their story had begun. They rode out on a clear September morning much like their wedding day, following the trail that had become familiar from a decade of living in the region. The canyon looked different in memory, smaller somehow, less threatening. They stood at the spot where Delilah had been held captive, where Samuel had stepped into the firelight and changed both their lives forever. A hawk circled overhead and the wind whispered through juniper trees, but otherwise the place was peaceful. "I used to have nightmares about this place," Delilah admitted, looking around. "For years after the attack, I would dream about being back here, terrified and helpless. But standing here now, I feel nothing but gratitude. This is where my real life began, where I met you, where everything changed." "I feel the same," Samuel said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "I often wonder what would have happened if I had taken a different route that night, if I had not heard the commotion. Would you have survived? Would we ever have met? I do not think so," Delilah said honestly. Those men would have killed me eventually, and even if I had somehow escaped on my own, I would have left the territory as quickly as possible, gone back east where it was safe. I never would have stayed, never would have met you. She leaned into him. It is strange to think that something so terrible led to something so wonderful. I would not wish that experience on anyone, but I cannot regret it either, because it brought me to you. God works in mysterious ways, Samuel said quietly. That is what my mother used to say. I think she would have liked you very much. I think I would have liked her too, Delilah replied. And your father, they raised an exceptional man. They spent the day exploring the canyons, this time in safety and peace, reclaiming the landscape from bad memories and replacing them with new, happy ones. They talked about their children and their ranch, about dreams yet to be fulfilled and blessings already received. By the time they rode home that evening, both felt that an old chapter had been closed and they could move forward unburdened by the trauma of the past. The years rolled on, bringing changes both expected and surprising. Marshall Bridger retired and was replaced by a younger man. Mrs. Wells passed away peacefully in her sleep at age 72, mourned by the entire town she had served with such kindness. The railroad reached Hill City, transforming the isolated frontier town into a proper transportation hub with connections to the wider world. Progress was unstoppable, and while Samuel sometimes missed the quieter days of his youth, he also appreciated the opportunities that modernization brought. Thomas grew into a responsible young man who loved ranching as much as his father did. When he turned 18, Samuel deeded him a parcel of their land to start his own operation, helping him get established just as James Caldwell had once helped Samuel. Margaret left for college in the East, one of the first women from Hill City to do so, with plans to become a teacher like her mother. James, at 16, was still finding his way but showed promise in everything he tried. On a warm evening in July, Samuel and Delilah celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary with a gathering of family and friends at the ranch. It had become a tradition to host a summer party each year, and this one was especially festive. The ranch now covered over 300 acres, supported a herd of more than 200 cattle, and employed 6 full-time hands. The house had grown to 10 rooms, comfortable and well-appointed, a testament to 2 decades of hard work and careful management. As the party wound down and guests began departing, Samuel found Delilah standing alone near the creek that had been part of their property from the beginning. She was watching the water flow, her hair now touched with gray but her figure still slim and strong. She was 41 years old and had never been more beautiful to Samuel's eyes. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming up beside her. Delilah smiled without taking her eyes from the water. "About how far we have come. About that terrified girl in a torn dress who asked how she could ever repay the man who saved her life. Sometimes it feels like that happened yesterday. Other times it feels like it happened to completely different people." "In some ways it did," Samuel said. "We were so young then, and we knew so little about what we were getting into. If someone had told me that night in the canyon that we would build all this together, I am not sure I would have believed them. But we did build it," Delilah said, turning to face him. "Through hard work and faith and love. We built a home, a family, a legacy. Our children will have opportunities we never dreamed of. The land will continue providing long after we are gone, and it all started because you were brave enough to help a stranger in trouble." Samuel pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "And because you were brave enough to trust that stranger, to build a life with him in a wild place, far from everything familiar. You are the brave one, Delilah. You always have been." They stood together by the creek, as the last light faded from the sky and stars began to appear. From the house came the sound of laughter as their children and remaining guests enjoyed the evening. The cattle lowed softly in distant pastures, and a night bird called from the pines. Everything was peaceful, prosperous, and exactly as it should be. "How can I ever repay you?" Samuel whispered, echoing those long-ago words but giving them new meaning. "For the life you have given me, for the love you have shown me, for the man you have helped me become." Delilah pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, her own shining with tears of joy. "You already have, my love. Every single day, you already have." They kissed under the stars, a kiss that held 20 years of shared history and the promise of years still to come. Behind them stood the house they had built, filled with the family they had created. Around them stretched the land they had tamed and cultivated. And above them wheeled the same stars that had shone on a different night 2 decades past, when a cowboy rescued a shivering woman from bandits, and both their lives changed forever. The years continued their steady march toward the new century. Samuel turned 50 with grace and good health, still active in running the ranch, though increasingly he left day-to-day operations to Thomas and the ranch hands. Delilah had finally retired from teaching after 30 years in the classroom, having influenced hundreds of young lives. She now devoted her time to writing, and to being a grandmother to Thomas's 2 young children, and to Margaret's baby daughter born just that year. The Crawford Ranch had become an institution in the region, known not just for quality cattle but for fair employment practices and community involvement. Samuel served on the school board, the town council, and as an elder in their church. Delilah's writings had been collected and published as a book titled A Teacher's Life in the Dakota Territory, which sold respectably and was taught in some Eastern schools as an authentic account of Western life. On the 25th anniversary of their wedding, Samuel and Delilah renewed their vows in the same church where they had first married. Their children and grandchildren attended, along with what seemed like the entire population of Hill City. The celebration afterward lasted well into the night, with food and music and speeches honoring the couple who had become pillars of their community. Standing before their friends and family, Samuel spoke from the heart. 25 years ago, I was a simple cowhand with nothing but determination and a good horse. Then, I met this extraordinary woman, and she transformed my life in ways I am still discovering. She made me want to be better, do more, reach higher. Everything I have achieved, I owe to her love and faith in me. She is my partner, my compass, my home. I love her more today than I did on our wedding day, and I will love her more tomorrow than I do today. That is my promise to her, and I have never broken a promise to Delilah Crawford. Delilah responded with equal emotion. I came west running from grief and seeking a fresh start. I found both those things, but I found so much more. I found a man whose courage matched his kindness, whose strength was tempered by gentleness. Samuel saved my life twice, once from those bandits, and again from a future of loneliness and meaningless days. He showed me what it means to build something lasting, to work toward a purpose larger than yourself. He gave me children, gave me a home, gave me a reason to wake up grateful every single morning. He is the best man I have ever known, and being his wife has been the greatest honor of my life. There was not a dry eye in the church by the time they finished speaking. The kiss they shared was met with cheers and applause, and as they walked back down the aisle together, Samuel felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the path his life had taken. One decision on one night a quarter-century ago had set everything in motion, and he would never cease being thankful for whatever instinct had made him ride toward danger rather than away from it. The ranch continued prospering under increasingly joint management between Samuel and Thomas. Father and son worked well together, combining Samuel's experience with Thomas's energy and new ideas. They expanded into horse breeding in addition to cattle, developing a reputation for producing sturdy, intelligent mounts that sold for premium prices. James eventually joined the operation as well after a few years trying his luck at prospecting, admitting that ranching was in his blood after all. Margaret became a professor at a women's college in the East, but returned home every summer with her family, keeping close ties to her roots. She often said that growing up on the ranch had given her the determination and work ethic that had carried her through academic challenges. Her children loved visiting the ranch, and Samuel delighted in teaching his grandchildren the same skills his father had taught him so many years ago. As Samuel entered his 60s, his hair went completely gray, and his face became deeply lined from decades of sun and wind. But he remained strong and active, still rising before dawn to check on the cattle, still riding fence lines and mending what needed mending. Delilah aged gracefully beside him, her beauty deepening rather than fading, her eyes still bright with the intelligence and humor that had first attracted him. They had built the life they had dreamed of that first night by the creek, and more. The house was full of photographs documenting their journey, their wedding, the birth of each child, special occasions and ordinary moments captured and preserved. The land bore the marks of their stewardship, healthy and productive, carefully managed for future generations. The family name was respected throughout the territory and beyond. One evening, sitting on their porch as they had done thousands of times before, Delilah said thoughtfully, "You know what I realized today? I have now lived more of my life with you than without you. The years before we met feel like they happened to someone else, some other Delilah I barely remember." "I feel the same," Samuel agreed, taking her hand. "My real life began the night I found you in that canyon. Everything before was just preparation. You think you would do it all again?" Delilah asked. "Knowing everything that would happen, all the hard work and challenges and struggles, would you make the same choices?" Samuel did not hesitate, without question. "Every single choice, every sacrifice, every difficulty, I would do it all again exactly the same way because it led to this. To us. To the family we built and the life we share. I have no regrets, Delilah, not one." "Neither do I," Delilah said softly. "That terrified girl in the canyon could never have imagined becoming this person, living this life. But that is the gift you gave me, the chance to become more than I ever thought I could be." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set behind the familiar mountains. Somewhere in the house, voices and laughter echoed as children and grandchildren visited. In the barn, horses whickered as ranch hands settled them for the night. In the pastures, cattle grazed peacefully under the watchful eye of experienced herders. Everything was ordered and right, the result of decades of patient work and steadfast love. Samuel Crawford had started with nothing but determination and integrity. He had faced down danger to save a stranger, and that moment of courage had defined the rest of his life. The stranger had become his wife, his partner, his greatest blessing. Together they had built something that would endure long after they were gone, a ranch, a family, a legacy of hard work and honest dealing. As full darkness fell and stars emerged one by one, Samuel and Delilah rose from their chairs and went inside to join their family. The house was warm and bright, filled with love and laughter. This was what they had worked for, sacrificed for, built together over more than 3 decades. This was the answer to that whispered question from so long ago. How can I ever repay you? With a life well lived, with love given freely and faithfully, with children raised to be good people, with land stewarded carefully for future generations, with a partnership that honored both people equally, with joy chosen deliberately even in difficult times, with gratitude expressed not just in words but in actions every single day. That was the repayment, and it had been made over and over again across the years. Two people who had found each other in the worst of circumstances had created the best of lives. A cowboy and the woman he rescued had become husband and wife, partners and parents, builders of a lasting legacy. Their story had begun with fear and violence, but had become one of love and creation. From that desperate night in a lonely canyon had grown a family tree with spreading branches, a ranch that provided livelihoods for dozens of people, a marriage that served as an example of commitment and mutual respect. The investment of one act of courage had paid dividends beyond measure. And so Samuel and Delilah Crawford lived out their days surrounded by the fruits of their partnership, grateful for the chance meeting that had changed everything, thankful for the life they had built together. When their time finally came to leave this world, it would be with the satisfaction of knowing they had mattered, had made a difference, had loved and been loved in return. The cowboy who rescued a shivering woman from bandits never expected to gain anything from his act of heroism. But he gained everything that truly mattered: a partner to share life's burdens and joys, children to carry his values forward, land that would sustain future generations, and most importantly, the deep contentment that comes from living with purpose and integrity. How can I ever repay you? The question had been asked in desperation and answered through a lifetime of devotion. In the end, they both knew the truth. Some debts cannot be calculated or repaid because the gifts they represent are beyond price. Love, freely given and gratefully received, creates a circle that has no beginning and no end. Samuel had saved Delilah's life, but she had saved his soul, filling it with meaning and joy he had never known was possible. And that was repayment enough, more than enough, for both of them. Their story ended not with words, but with a lifetime of actions that spoke louder than any declaration. In the Black Hills of South Dakota, on a ranch built with their own hands, surrounded by children and grandchildren who would carry their legacy forward, Samuel and Delilah Crawford had found their happily ever after. The cowboy and the woman he rescued had become legends in their own time, not for dramatic deeds but for the quiet, steady way they had built a life of love and purpose that would endure for generations to come.